But yes, no more hearing me. We all want to hear you. So
yeah, a voice actor without a microphone is like a voice actor without a microphone. So it's just not all. I mean, all we have are our voices. You know, I'm noticing there's a lot of face actors here today. You know, people from Grimm and from Disney shows, and they have an added advantage. You know what they look like. I'm so flattered that some of you know what I do and who I am, and then when I walk in the room, you knew me. So, you know, because it's a life of invisibility, anonymity, which is in its own way kind of comfortable, but also, you know, I don't get the best tables at the restaurants. Rooms don't part for me, but it's a great way to make a living, and I believe I've been really blessed to end up in this business as a voice actor, mainly for the fact that I get to meet lovely people like you when I do these cons. You know, when I come out to these things, you guys remind me, when you say to me, and the most common comment I get is, you're the voice of my childhood. When you guys, thank you for bobbing. You say that to me, you make my middle age better. You make me know that I've done something that counts for something, you know, that I've helped. You know, maybe I helped you through a hard homework session, or maybe I one or two people tell me I helped you through some teenage, you know, adolescent depression, and you know, myself and the 87 other people that made Pinky and the Brain. Obviously, it's not just me, but it gives me a great feeling, and I'm glad for the longevity that comes with this career as well. So I get to do it for a long, long time, instead of being on a sitcom for maybe 4 years and then, you know, playing the neighbor who does impressions, and then you never see me again. So this has been great. An actor likes to work, and I don't have to worry about hair lighting and makeup, and I just get to get behind a microphone and create characters. And that's the greatest thing an actor could ask for. Keep working for 27 years. I was just saying to my assistant that I've been the voice of Toucan Sam for 27 years. I can't believe that. I got the job in 1987, and I've been following my nose to residual checks. So, anyway, this is supposed to be a Q&A, not me rambling on and on about myself. This isn't the meeting of Narcissists Anonymous. So, you guys have any questions for me? Nick will come to you with the microphone. You can ask him on the mic, and I would be all good.
When you hear yourself, are you what you imagine?
You know, I've trained myself to know the actual sound of my voice. Most people, when they hear themselves on playback, don't you all think your voices are much deeper than that?
Yes.
Right? When I hear myself played back, I've now trained myself all day long to hear myself as I actually sound. I've canceled out the bass response of my own skull. So I'm not surprised when I hear myself. You know, when I was a little kid, yeah, sure, I used to think I sounded like a little girl. My father was in radio, and he brought me down to the station, and I spoke into the microphone and then played it back. And I was like, Daddy, I sound like a girl. Of course, when I talk like that, I do sound like a girl, even at 56 years old. I sound like a girl, don't I? Okay, so anyway, but when I started doing this, one of the first things I started to do was work at home with my own sort of tape setup. I mean, I'm 16 years old, and I've got, you know, saved and my job cleaning the bakery at Loblaws supermarket in Willowdale, Ontario. And I saved and saved for a very good cassette recorder, almost studio quality cassette recorder. And I started working with voices and listening to myself on playback and comparing it to what I'm hearing on TV. I mean, that's the way I used to work. I used to sit there and just study and copy and imitate. So I'm not surprised when I hear myself. Now, when they play with my voice a little bit electronically and make me a little crisper and a little, I don't know, how many of you know that I'm the voice of Lexus? But I do all the Lexus versions. The 2014 Lexus GS. They make my voice a little more present. They take a little of the bottom off. They put a little crispness in there. And when I hear that back, I often will, say to the guys as I come out of the booth and they're still mixing it, I'll say to Bob and Bruce, the two engineers I work with, Thank you for making me sound like a real professional television announcer. You know, so there's little things they can still do. But for the most part, yeah, I'm comfortable with the sound of my own voice, which might be the first thing in being a voice actor. You've got to learn to be comfortable with that. So yes, that's... Any other questions? Yes?
Well, first off, now I want Alexis. Thank you for that. Your support characters, are you surprised that, like, for example, the principal in The Critic, or Calculon, or Lure, were you surprised when those characters, like especially Calculon and Lure, when they became more popular and got their own storyline and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I was very gratified. Morbo, the newscaster. Yeah, the writers have always toyed with the idea, let's follow Morbo home, you know, from the studio, and see what his life was like. But I think the greatest glimpse they could have given Morbo was in 300 Big Boys, when they're all at that reception, and Nixon gives everybody $300, and they're at the reception. It's just a little passing shot, you know, and we see, in fact, it's one of my photos on my table. It's Morbo's wife, who's of the same species as him, adjusting his bow tie for his tuxedo, and he's going, it's fine, I'm going to destroy you! And I think that's all we need to know about Morbo's private life. That is the great line, you know, how's the family, Morbo? Belligerent and numerous. Just assume that, you know, this Morbo is just hatching them like crazy. But the Lure storylines have been really interesting. Even though the voices are very similar, they're very different characters in my head. And I know that if you listen to the commentary track, it's kind of become a running gag where, you know, at least once a commentary I say, Lure and Morbo sound completely different. You know, it's a gag, it's a joke, it's part of my obnoxious character on the commentary tracks. But the truth of the matter is they sound almost exactly the same. But in my head, they're different guys with very different wants. And there is a slightly different sound. I pitch Morbo just a little lower, and I give him much better diction because he's a newscaster. And Lure is just a little more casual sounding because what the hell, he's a king. Omicron for CIA, and he doesn't really have to answer anybody except But the episode More Reconcilable Than Differences was actually one of the best storylines on midlife crisis I've ever seen on any show. And I was very honored to have been, and shocked to have been nominated for Outstanding Voiceover Performance at the Emmy Awards in 2011 for that performance. I played two characters. I played Lure for the entire episode. There really was a Lure-centric episode. And I played Orson Welles' head in a jar. Why they gave that part to me, I have no idea. And I went to the Emmys that year, and you know, it was just certain that it was just going to go to. I mean, I was up against later to win an Oscar, Christopher Plummer in that category, and somehow or another they awarded me. So I won the Emmy that year for that part. So you gotta love a guy like Lure, you know, because he brings you an Emmy. But he's also kind of a deep, rich character. You know, he's a king, and yet he's set upon, you know, put upon him in his own home. I built this castle with my own two slaves. You know, I mean, you know, and he's an egomaniac, and yet, you know, you can tell at the center of him he's really suffering from some low self-esteem. So there was some richness and depth. So I love when a secondary character, or Principal Mobutu, you know, he was just a lot of fun. I don't think we ever gave him a storyline on The Critic, but I just loved playing him because I basically was doing Jeffrey Holder. I don't know if any of you remember the 7-Up guy from the 1970s. Crisp and clean, no caffeine. He was also in Live and Let Die. You know, he was famous for that big toothy laugh of his. So that's basically what I do for Principal Mobutu. It's a lot of fun to be the secondary voice guy, what they call the utility voice guy is the name for it in Simpsons and Futurama speak. Because you get to stretch. I get to play. There was somebody with a lot more time in his hands than me who did a website of the voices of Futurama, and I think I've done, at last count, 72 different characters, including regulars, recurrings, and one-offs. 72 different characters, and you know, you just get challenged by coming in, and David X. Cohen said, "Okay, so this week you're a porno-dealing alien." So I just made sure I went thorough. I'm a porno-dealing alien. What do you want from me? You know. And I thought he was never going to come back, and he actually came back in the last episode. So we're actually talking about spinning him off into his own show. Joe, actually the closest we ever came to a spin-off, there was, and this made the web, so you probably already know this, there was almost a Zach and Kif spin-off from Futurama. But I think they just felt like, okay, so it's these two guys exploring space instead of the Planet Express crew exploring space. It would have been fun to find out who some of those guys are on board the Nimbus, especially the guy who yells, "You suck!" John LaMarche did the greatest "you suck," you know, for when Zap was addressing all of the men in the back. But I would have liked to have seen that show come about, not just for the paycheck, but because I think that would have been a fun world to explore. And their interplay, Billy and I playing Zap and Kif, they're such an odd couple. But I love playing, again, he was going to be just a tertiary character, getting his own storylines. They made him a romantic character on the show, you know. He's a bit, again, put upon, but he's the one who, you know, really loves Amy and he'll do anything for her, and he actually got to be kind of heroic in that episode where the buffalo roam. You know, and I thought their chemistry would have been interesting to explore, you know, as this, you know, odd couple kind of thing.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know I mentioned...
I'm up here with a microphone. How much more on the spot can I be?
I'm always so impressed by the gaseous belches, these deep, huge sounds, and they make you do them all the time, it seems, on Futurama. Is there
if only someone with a higher voice and soft skin felt that way. Yes, go ahead.
But I mean, what's your technique for that? I mean,
my technique for that is lots of Diet Coke. No, my technique for that is all vocal. I'm happy to report. That's my wife. I use very little actual burping when I do the belching for, say, what I did for Wacko on Animaniacs, Wacko.
oh, I didn't know you did.
Yeah, it's a great wackarati. And you know, it's the Hollywood Bowl, and it's the big jar of seltzer that Dot sprays into his mouth, and Yak goes at the piano and he steps out and goes, That's a totally vocal effect. There's no actual gas other than the carbon dioxide that escapes when anybody talks. I rasp my voice box, but I also create a big echo chamber. I don't know, for some reason I can make my tongue do, you know, strange things. And I create 2 echo chambers in my cheeks and under here, and that's where the depth of that sound comes. And I just close off everything and just let it all resonate in there, and it sounds like a belch or a vomit or any number of savory things. Let's go eat. Any other questions? Let's just pass the microphone motion. So consider it like a bomb or something.
Well, when's the first time you ever remember doing Orson Welles?
Well, Neil, you actually have Neil Ross to thank for my Orson Welles. He gave me a tape of Orson Welles doing a frozen peas commercial, a real life frozen peas commercial in the late 70s in England, and it had made the rounds of recording engineers. It used to be only recording engineers had this stuff, and occasionally they'd share it with their favorite voice actors and radio announcers. But it was a bunch of outtakes of Orson doing this frozen peas commercial, and getting very irritated with the directors because he was being over-directed. He gave me this tape, and I listened to it over and over and over again. I'll say that Phil Proctor from the Fireside Theater had also given me the tape, but I had lost his. So it was out of my sight for about a year. And then when Neil gave it to me, I held on to his for dear life. And I listened to it over and over and over again. and backwards, I mean, I recorded it on the other side. That's how insane I was for this thing. So I had it on a continuous loop. I was fascinated with every facet of this man. And I started out going, my goodness, that's just so, how dare he speak to directors this way? And as I listened and as I began working voiceover, I began to go, he's right. There is too much directing around here. No way. There is no way. So I memorized the thing backwards and forwards, but really the first time I did it was in my car. Just driving, it's just like the way you'd sing along to a song, I would go, get me a jury and show me how you can say in July and I'll go down on it. Along with Orson. So much so that when we did the episode of Pinky and the Brain called Yes Always, which was a cleaned up, bad words taken out version of that, apparently the timing with which we recorded it was so dead on that a guy took the animation from the episode Yes Always, where Brain does a frozen peas commercial, and sets it to the actual tape of Orson, and it syncs up perfectly. It's wacky. It's really wacky. It's almost like a Tool thing. I mean, it was weird, We didn't need to adjust the animation at all. It's all the lines. It's amazing. So the Orson became deeply ingrained, and I often thought to myself, when am I ever going to use this voice?
Transformers the movie.
Yeah, or that was the real Orson, I have to say. I think it was the very last voiceover job he ever did. He did go on. He went on the Merv Griffin show the day he died, and that you can actually see that on YouTube. And it's a little eerie to know that he would die several hours later after doing this terrific last appearance. So. I have tremendous respect for the man. I mean, I've never seen Citizen Kane. The only film that he had complete creative control over. It's a work of genius, and Hollywood did not treat him well from there forth. I think because he dared to say, my vision's best, and I know it's best for my movies. But anyway, so that was that's where I began to. That's my first Orson Welles experience. He's treated me well. I used to be, kids, if you smoke, quit now, and if you haven't started, never start, because then you won't ever have to quit. So, but I used to be a voracious cigar smoker, and one of the positive memories I have is that when Orson Welles died, his assistant actually came into the cigar store where I frequent and sold Orson's last box of Cuban cigars. And I bought them like that. So, I mean, I like to think that maybe somehow or another the spirit of Orson entered me one puff at a time, but let's think about it, that's a little eerie, especially when you consider the cigar. I don't know. Big long cigar. Anyway, so that's it. That's the Orson thing. Anybody else? Who's got the mic now?
I have the mic.
Hey!
The other Ghostbuster.
How much did you get to do?
I don't recall our uniforms being blue and what color is that? Orange. I wouldn't quite call that orange. More of a puce. Anyway, sorry.
How much improvising did you get to do on any of your lines, or was it just stick with the script? Or
I'm a big stick with the script guy. I tend to believe that writers, I love writers, because mainly because I can't do it, I've tried. I don't have the discipline for it. Or the ability to watch things, come out of my fingers and have them suck. You have to be willing to suck and then, wipe it away and start again and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite. So I'm a big booster of writers, and so I don't really play with the scripts too much. I like to just stick with the written word. And I've been so lucky that I've gotten to work with some of the best writers that have ever put pen to paper or fingers to keyboard in this business. The team on Futurama, the team on The Critic, the team on Pinky and the Brain and Animaniacs, and the team on The Simpsons, which I'm proud to say I've become such a frequent guest voice on there that I'm like coming up right up behind Joe Mantegna in terms of most frequent guest appearances. I'm so honored to be a part of that, there's no need for me to tinker in any way, shape, or form. So I stick with the script. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, oh yeah, what was your first paying voice job, and what were you doing before that?
United States or Canada? United States, Canada, Mexico, Panama, I can't. That would be cute if Paulson and I were together. He'd be off. But the very first paid voiceover job I ever did was in Canada at the age of 19 years old. It was a show called, it was a one-off special called Easter Fever with Garrett Morris from Saturday Night Live and now Two Broke Girls as the Easter Bunny. And John Candy did a guest voice in it. I mean, this is before any of them were doing movies. And Catherine O'Hara. And, you know, they'd seen me at Yuck Yucks, the comedy club in Toronto, doing all these impressions. And the idea was it was a roast of the Easter Bunny. So they had Steve Martin, you know, I am a wild and crazy horse, and Don Rackles, you know, were you born that ugly? Anyway, gang. You know, these were the lines that I had to say in the show. And so I did like 6 voices, and I was like, you know, that was, you want to talk about hearing my voice. Yeah, I'd heard my voice many times, but the first time, that was the first time I'd ever seen my voice come out of the lips of an animated character. And when I saw that, I went, oh, I gotta do more of this. That's the closest thing there is to magic. You know, you're almost transformed, as it were. Since we're Transformers heavy convention. You know, I was transformed into an animated rattlesnake and an animated horse and an animated Easter bat. You know, because they're auditioning people to take over for the Easter bunnies. I was Peter Easter bat. And, you know, so that was the very first thing I ever did. And then first thing I did when I came to the States, I did a Southwest Airlines commercial with Hector Elizondo. That was my first paid gig in voiceover in Los Angeles. So those were my first jobs. And then the first TV series I did was Inspector Gadget as chief. That was like the pebble starting to become a boulder. You know, started with that, went into Real Ghostbusters, then just, you know, a few more things. Attack of the Killer Tomatoes I did for a couple of years, and then into Tiny Toons, Animaniacs, Tasmania, and Futurama, Pinky the Brain Critic. So, it's been a long and storied career. All off of one little voice. Anything else? Any other questions?
Did you receive any like formal vocal training, like, or did you just? You said you got a really good tape recorder and you just listened to your voice over and over. Was that your training, or did you?
I've never studied anything voice-wise except I'm autodidactic in this area. I've always been able to do impressions and voices even as a little kid. You know, I used to parrot back in commercials. It comes from a strong desire not to be me. And you know, so but I was always, even as a little kid, doing, you know, fuck dash, and you know. The Turkish taffy commercial was one that I used to be able to do by memory. So, no, I've always been able to do this, and I've never studied. And yet I tell everybody to study, because I'm the luckiest SOB in the business. I don't know how I got here. And people say, how do you get into it? I go, well, I guess what you do is you fail at stand-up comedy, and you know, become depressed, and hide out, and don't do anything for 2 years, but, you know, then somebody hires you to do a show and come out of your house and do the show. You know, I mean, I think it's just, I don't know how to, you know, my path has been a very different one. But I always recommend studying with working voice actors. If you've got an industry here, of any kind, study with people who work. Or I know that Houston has got, you know, a working voiceover industry. There's things like the Learning Annex. There's a wonderful website by my friend Dean Bradley Baker called iwanttobeavoiceactor.com, and he's got a lot of lessons on there. You know, much better. I mean, those who can do, and also those who can, at least in our business, teach. And he can teach. I am not a good teacher. If I said to you the things I say to myself when I'm working and teaching myself, I'd have to be arrested. You know, that sucks. That's terrible. Do it better. What are you doing in this business? These are the things I say to myself as I'm working. Well, how do you get paid? I don't understand. How does anybody get paid? You know, these are the things that my head feels while I'm doing a Lexus commercial. Still to this day. Yes, sir.
Do you have any friendships with other voice actors from a lot of your jobs?
I do. You know, it's funny. I was this facet of the business is peopled by some of the nicest human beings in the entertainment industry. We really can't afford to have egos because nobody knows what we look like. We can be replaced tomorrow. You know, if I was to have gotten to, in fact, for those of you that saw Yes Always, you know, at the end of that episode, Brain decides to walk off out of the recording studio, and Andrea Romano, playing herself, is outside auditioning like 50 brain-sized voice actors. And she's saying, is anybody else ready to audition for part of the Brain? And they all go, yes, always, and 50 of them. And, you know, that's the thing. We don't have big egos. We are nice people, you know, good people, kind people. So yeah, I'm friendly with a ton of folks in my industry. Most especially Rob Paulson. Rob and I playing Pinky in the Brain. Over the years, we've developed a real friendship where we actually text each other, you know, a couple of times a day with something funny or a story. We talk on the phone at least once a week, and when we go, we're ready and go get dinner. And when we come out on these things, it's like a little mini vacation for us, a chance for us to catch up and go out and grab a bite and just have a great time for 3 days. And, you know, yeah, beautiful, beautiful folks in this business. As you'll find as you meet us, you know. So I've got a lot of friendships in this business. Very sweet people. I got to had a terrific dinner last night with Michael Bell, Neil Ross, and David Sobolov, and who's it called? Brett Berger, and Jeffrey Combs, for the animator. I got dinner next to him. But this wonderful place, Aldo's, if you like Italian food, you know, hit Aldo's. It's really wonderful. So, but we had a great talk. We didn't talk about the business of the entire time. We talked about life, and marriages, and children, and that sort of thing. We're just like real people. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Has there been a character that, or a voice that you wish you had saved for something else, or when you saw it and you went, oh, that didn't quite work?
That's a good question. You know, I'll have to think about that. Let's all meet back here next week.
My question was about your experience working with video game voiceovers as opposed to television and movies. If there is any difference in your process and what you think about the technology behind video games now and allowing voice actors to work.
Well, the technology, what hits the screen is amazing. When I was working on Arkham City, I mean, just the movement of the characters and the depth and richness of the images, it's almost cinematic. I mean, we're almost at the point now where that's a movie. In terms of the work, though, I mean, there's a big difference between on-camera work and voiceover work, and especially game voiceover work. You know, you spend most of your day waiting to go on and shoot a, you know, 48, 50-second, 2-minute scene. And you're, you know, it's your trailer, you're at the, you know, craft table, whatever, and it's a lot of sitting around and waiting. With voiceover, you're in there and you are hammering the lines out on video games. And it is, you know, you get a small city phone book with a game, with lines for games. And it can be very taxing, especially since a good third of that is your character's death, done as many ways as the game has it, short, medium, and long. You know, you could fall from, you're falling from a very small cliff, you're falling from a 50-foot cliff, you're falling from a 200-foot cliff, and you're screaming, okay, you've been shot, okay, you've been shot 5 times, you're on fire, okay, now it's just a little fire, your ass is on fire. It's a very, very intensive experience of recording video games. And there's so many responses. And because your character, it's like a tree, you know, you get to a point and it's left, right, go straight. In terms of the characters, you know, what happens to them. So you have to be able to play all kinds of different attitudes at various stopping points in the game. So you could have just played your character's death, and then you're playing your character going on to be the triumphant character in the game. So it really runs the gamut. It's a very intensive experience to do voice acting for a video game. I actually do turn down a lot of video games because I've roasted my throat on early games and was unfit to work for about a month, and I had to turn down auditions and jobs for one job. And I just thought, that's not good math. One job, you know, subtracts 20 jobs? No. So now I only do video games where there's a minimum of screaming and death, and that will make me look cool with my son. Anything to do with Batman, anything to do with Star Wars or Star Trek, I'll do. But other than that, I don't do the war games. You know, it's too much for his throat.
I have a quick follow-up, just real quick, just yes or no. Have you ever been asked?
Can't you see there are thousands of people making that?
There are tens of people.
Go ahead, please.
Just as a quick follow-up, because I'm a huge Nintendo fan, so I just gotta know, has Nintendo ever asked you to do a voice, or is there a voice from their franchises that you've sort of been like, I could do this character justice, or something like that?
Not that I know of. No, I don't think I've ever been approached by Nintendo, no. I mean, like for the DS, for like handheld
yeah, well,
games?
because even like their Wii, any of the newer titles that they do, because they're giving voices to like Mario now and
yeah,
all those
no,
characters.
I haven't been approached to do those. No, not yet. Not yet.
Before he asks a question.
Anybody here?
How long did it take before you drove your wife crazy?
Oh, a long story. Me and my therapist could sit down. And her therapist. So they probably start punching each other. She's always been my biggest booster in terms of what I do. It's the other things about her about me that make her crazy. But I've got a lot of quirks. Let me just say that. I'm just a little bit quirky around the house. I'm very like, that goes there and it can't be moved. Don't touch that. Okay, this pile here, honey, you can't touch that until I go through. I'm a little OCD on such things. And yet the kitchen has to be spotless and immaculate. And, you know, it's very bizarre. Those things drive her a little nuts. My wife and I actually have been separated for 11 years, and just around Christmas time this year, we started dating again. And so we still live in separate houses, but we are in love, and we will be seeing how it goes from here on in. We spend a lot of time together, and we're each other's best friend, and always have been, even through the 11 years of separation. We were always there for each other, and I always will be, no matter what happens. But yeah, my wife and I are falling in love again, so it's fantastic. That's why I call her my wife now instead of my estranged wife. I actually had this really long title for her. I'd said my estranged, my living apart, my whatever the hell we are, you know. So but now she's my wife.
What's your favorite voice to do and your most difficult voice?
Okay. My favorite voice is the brain. You can't spend 6 years with a character who basically his every want is every want you had. I mean, he wants to take over the world. I and every actor who ever moved to Los Angeles wants to take over the world of show business. I mean, we're all egomaniacs, every last one of us. And so, and we're constantly thwarted, you know. And, you know, only one guy gets to be Brad Pitt. You know. So the grandiose schemes of every actor. So I related very much to the character. Plus getting to play that, you know, doing that deep, that rich, ringing voice was tremendous fun because one can truly savor an insult. It must be inordinately taxing to be such a boob. I could reach you, I would hurt you. So in terms of a character, he's my favorite. But the most difficult is Yosemite Sam. He really rips me up. As I said, I did one game. It was a Yosemite Sam. I had like 50 pages of lines for Yo Sam, as we like to call him. And to do them right, because there's a lot of guys that can sort of do them, but they're smart enough not to go all the way. Only Mel Blanc, if you read his autobiography, he talks about only doing Yosemite Sam on Friday, so he has the weekend to recover. And that's kind of my rule too. Because Yosemite Sam is all the way here. Oh, thanks, rabbits. 4 hours. When you do it right, you gotta go, to the wall, so that's the short answer to that question. And yeah, I love him. He's a lovable, irascible character. A lot of fun. Anyone else? With a kiss going. I find you like a faith student. The force is with you, question asker.
First I need some clarification if you're Pinky and the Brain.
If you want verification if I'm Pinky and the Brain?
Yes, or if you were just the voice of one of them?
I was only the Brain. Rob Paulson, a tremendously talented voice actor, and also known as Donatello from and Raphael. He's actually now half of the Ninja Turtles. He's Raphael in the new iteration. Is Pinky, and he's my partner in crime.
Yes, and also when you actually record these, you have to do it just one line at a time, just several times before you decide, oh, right, that's good enough.
Well, no, we generally read it like a radio play, and we're stopped by the director only when there's, something she wants to do again. So we read it the same way you'd read a radio play. In fact, we've done a couple of episodes we read through with only maybe 2 or 3 breaks. But, then there's other times where you only do a page. But we try to get a flow of the scene and what's happening, at least on Pinky and the Brain. There are other jobs where you do go one line at a time. Disney feature tends to work that way, where you just do 1 or 2 lines and then stop them. And they're very focused on just getting that particular line right. So. And you're alone in the studio, which is my favorite way to work is ensemble style, which we did on Futurama, Animaniacs, Pinky and the Brain, The Critic.
Thanks for coming, Mr. Paulson. I just want to know what you're going to do tonight.
Mr. Paulson?
Mr. Paulson, are you?
No,
what was the question?
I was just asking, what are you going to be doing tonight?
Same thing I do every night, my friend. Tend the river walk and then take over the world. Who else? Who else has a question?
Question for the porno-giving alien from Futurama.
It's not so much a question.
Yes,
I just kind of want you to do the Frozen Bees commercial.
The Frozen Bees commercial? We have young people here. I can't. There are wordy nerds in it. So. All right. Setting is a recording studio in England. In the days, in the 1970s, where there was no ISDN, Internet Subscriber Data Network, there was no internet that could be accessed, there was no Skype. So they flew you. They flew you first class. So they flew Orson Welles first class to England to record a series of commercials for a line of foods there by a company called Finder's Frozen Foods, and still exists. And he's there, and he's got 2 directors he's working with, and I'll try to play everybody. And I'm sorry, young man, you're going to hear a word or 2 that I'm sure you've never heard.
Yeah, sure.
We know a remote farm in Lincolnshire where Mrs. Buckley lives. Every July, peas grow there. you really mean that?
Yes, I'd start about half a second late.
Don't you think you really want to say July over the snow? Isn't that the fun of it?
If you could make it almost when that shot disappears, I think it would make much fun.
I think it's so nice that you see the snow-covered field and say every July peas grow there. We know a remote farm in Lincolnshire where Mrs. Buckley lives. Every July, peas grow there. We aren't even in the fields, you see.
No.
We're talking about them growing and she's picked them. I don't understand you then. What must be over for July?
Well, when we get out of that snowy field.
But I was out. We were on a can of peas, a big dish of peas when I said July.
You are?
Yes, always. I'm always past that. That's about where I said July. Could you emphasize a bit in July? Well, that doesn't make any sense. Sorry, there's no known way of saying an English sentence in which you begin a sentence with in and emphasize. Get me a jury and show me how you can say in July and I'll go down on you. It's just idiotic, if you'll forgive me for my saying so, that's just stupid, in July. I'd love to know how you emphasize in July. Impossible, meaningless.
I think all they were thinking about was they didn't want...
He isn't thinking.
Also, could you do just one last one? It was my fault. I said in July. If you could leave it every July.
You didn't say it, he said it. Your friend. Every July? And you don't really mean every July? That's bad copy. It's in July. Of course it's every July. There's too much directing around here. Norway. Fingers, Norway. Fish fingers, Norway. We know a certain fjord in Norway, near where the cod gather in great shoals. There, yachts stand. Shit.
Fraction more that shows things. You roll it around very nicely.
Yeah, roll it around and I have no more time. You don't know what I'm up against. Because it's full of things that are only correct because they're grammatical, but they're tough on the ear. You see, this is a very wearying one. It's unpleasant to read. Unrewarding. Because spinners freeze the cod at sea and then add a crumb crisp oh, that's tough. Crumb crisp coating. I think because of the way it's written, you need to break it up because it's not as conversationally written.
Lose the word.
Take crumb out, good. Here under protest is beef burgers. We know a little place in the American Far West where Charlie Briggs chops up the finest prairie-fed beef and tastes each. This is a lot of shit, you know. You want one more?
We'll miss the first beef actually completely.
What do you mean miss it?
Well, you're emphasizing prairie-fed.
But you can't emphasize beef. That's like his wanting to emphasize in before July. Come on, fellas, you're losing your heads. I wouldn't direct any living actor like this in Shakespeare the way you do this. It's impossible.
Also, you did 6 last year, and by far and away the best. I think I know
the right reading for this is the one I'm giving you. I've spent 20 times more for you people than any other commercial I've ever made. You were such pests. Now, what is it you want in your depths of your ignorance? What is it? Whatever it is you want, I can't deliver because I just don't see it.
That was absolutely fine. It really was.
It isn't working. Don't mess with it.
Is there anybody that in the business that you haven't worked with that you want to work with?
Yes. I would give a tooth because I got 36 more. I would love to work with John Cleese in some capacity. I've already gotten to work with Eric Idle. He played both of Pinky's parents on Pinky and the Brain. So I've got 1/6 of Monty Python down. And, you know, unfortunately 4 more to go. Grant Chapman left us. But I would love to work with Cleese. He's a hero. He's a master of timing. His brilliance, just I mean, in terms of just what he knows, his philosophy of life. I can't, you know, I'm in awe of the man. Absolutely in awe. So that's on my bucket list. If I could just do something with Cleese and meet him. Shake his hand and have him not think me too great a fool. It would be a great thing. And hi. You can just shout it out.
Can you do the voice of Bernie?
Yes, my friend. Will you help me in my latest plan to take over the world? Pinky's in the corner buttering his feet at Acme Labs. I need a new partner. You and I will rule together. Yes, my chances just have to improve.
We can do one more.
Has there been a voice character that you've inherited that you were like kind of scared to do, that you worried that you're not going to live up to the original?
Yeah. In 1987, there was a series called Popeye and Son that Hanna-Barbera did, and they had created it with Jack Mercer in mind, who was the voice of Popeye for 50 years. Oddly enough, he was the second voice of Popeye. If you watched, I think there were about 10 or 11 black and white Depression-era cartoons where Popeye's voice is actually kind of different. And that guy is the original Popeye. His name was Bill Costello, and he was a vaudeville performer named Red Pepper Sam, because he sang everything down here, really, yeah. So, you know, when you hear the ones where he sounds like this, that's actually the original Popeye voice. That's Bill Costello. And then Bill Costello went off to serve in World War II. So Mercer was a storyboard artist for, oh goodness. No, I can't believe this. I can't remember the name of the studio. The Fleischer Studios. So he was a storyboard artist for the Fleischer Studios, and when he pitched stories, he'd do a pretty close impression of what Red Pepper Sam was doing. So when Costello left, Mercer filled in, and he ended up keeping the job for 50 years. And he was a gentleman, enjoyed to work with, and everybody loved him. And so they thought, wouldn't it be funny to finally have Popeye get married to Olive Oyl and bring him into the 80s, you know? So Olive Oyl had like, you know, she had the leg warmers, she was taking aerobics classes. Popeye had retired, he, instead of the sailor's uniform, he wore a Hawaiian shirt, and they had a 10-year-old son. And Jack Mercer unfortunately passed away while the show was in development. They still went on ahead. And I was lucky enough to get the job. Again, another throat-ripping voice, very difficult. But what I worried about more than how painful the voice was, am I going to be able to step into this iconic character's shoes? Now, luckily, most of the episodes centered around Popeye Jr. and Bluto's son. I was very lucky enough. Bluto's son, I believe, was Nancy Cartwright played Bluto's son on the show. So, and this was pre-Simpsons. So I was lucky that each episode kind of began with,
Well, son, what adventure are you off on today?
Don't forget to take your spinach. And then there was the show as the kids, surfing, because it was a seaside town. And then, you know, he'd come back, he'd win the adventure, whatever it was, a sea monster, and I'd just look at the camera and go,
That's my boy!
So after 13 episodes, of course, you know, the show got canceled. I take personal responsibility for it. But we were making the first 13 before it went on the air. But our last episode, they decided to give us a Popeye and Bluto. So, you know, Bluto and Popeye went off and fought the sea hag. And so that one was really a treat. And again, I thought, well, all right, I'm comfortable. The last 12 episodes have been a rehearsal. We actually do the interplay between Popeye and Bluto. But I did find myself always feeling as though I could never quite fill Jack Mercer's shoes. And of course I couldn't. You know, the man inhabited the character for 50 years. But hopefully I did it some justice.
Great, well, thank you so much for attending the panel today.
Yeah, thank you guys. And if you haven't stopped by my table, I'm in the celebrity room. I'm the only non-celebrity in there. And please stop by and say hi, and if you want an autograph, or I also will do voice recording for you for the same fee as an autograph. I'll do your answering machine or your voicemail greeting, and any character you like. So come visit me, say hi. Nice to meet you.